So, in this context, it is during his time as Prince of Wales and then as king that we get the emergence of the invisible government in the United States, the Rogue Network. Now, I told you before, I'm trying to posit that the force behind the gunpowder plot is actually the Venetian Party of England. So what's the one that's doing it in the US today? It is this invisible government or rogue network. And it goes back to J.P. Morgan, right? Wall Street financier. And his story is that he's the agent of the City of London in New York. During World War I, he buys all the munitions for the British and the French. Here he is talking to journalists. Charming fellow. They call him Jupiter. You can go to his mansion today. It's a library. It is all, the whole interior is Italian Renaissance. His idol was the banker Chigi of Florence. Now, during the era of Edward VII, and this is in the mid-1890s, you have this Venezuelan debt crisis, Barings Bank crisis beginning in the 1890s, ringing a bell. Anyway, what that leads to is a big attack on President Grover Cleveland of the US. This is the US president. So what happens is the City of London organizes a run on the US gold stock in 1895. It's a key date, 1895. And the President Cleveland capitulates to J.P. Morgan. And Morgan says, I will tell those guys in London to stop taking away the gold backing of the dollar. But you've got to issue Morgan bonds to give me a sweetheart interest rate. And it proves that Morgan is more powerful than the US government. And it also proves that essentially he has seized control of the public debt and public finance of the United States. And he did. And from this time on, we can say the government you see is not the real government. The government you see is not the real government. The government that really counts is a financier network, loyal to Wall Street and to some extent to London too, but mainly to Wall Street, inside the institutions. If you want a name for this faction, I suppose you could call it the Morgan, Mellon, Rockefeller Federal Reserve faction. The Federal Reserve Bank is simply the codification and institutionalization of these power relations. Okay? So, U.S. invisible government, 1895. And then things begin to happen. What happens? 1898, this U.S. battleship is blown up in Havana Harbor to get a war between the U.S. and Spain. Right? This is the USS Maine. It's blown up. The official story is that the Spanish did it. Well, why would the Spanish do it? Later on, a study has shown in the 1950s that the explosion was inside the ship. Therefore, an inside job. This was an inside job. This launches the U.S. empire, because the U.S. had no empire. But now they're going to get the Philippines, they're going to get various islands in the Pacific, and for a time they're going to get Cuba. Now here's the, this is a funny one. This is the proof they offer. So here's the Maine, and here's a Spanish mine. Now here we have the evil Spanish, right? And at this point I usually say, Algunos Bin Ladenitos Españoles muy malos. Right? Los Bin Ladenistas. So these are your little Spanish Bin Ladens who are about to detonate the mine and blow up this thing. And it says, this picture fixes the responsibility to the satisfaction of the American people. Now, wait a minute, it's not true, it's a lie. Who cares whether they're satisfied or not? So this is the Hearst Press.